Hello and welcome to the ninth episode of Inner Defenses Season 2. Welcome, Shiv. How are you? How was your week?
It's been a very, very political week, and that's
Yes.
all it's going to be until May this year, I
Yeah, for the
think.
next few months.
Yeah.
I was talking to my dad yesterday about my day, and I said just as hectic as it can be, and I think it's not gonna die down anytime soon.
I don't think you can describe what it's like really to be in election season until
Yeah.
you're a media
Yeah,
agency or an
definitely.
organization like ours, especially where it's just completely non-stop.
Hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. There's nothing else. I think it's a bit of a bit of a magical process that even this podcast is happening
Yeah.
on something apart from politics. So we all should be really thankful for
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Right. Let's dive into our topic of discussion. We've been wanting to talk about this
For a
subject
long
for a
time,
couple
yeah.
of 2, 3 episodes now, but something or the other kept coming up, and we kept pushing it. But finally, we'll get to it. And I think it'll be a lot of interest to people who already watch or listen to our podcast because some of the comments that I've read over the last couple of episodes that we've done, last several episodes actually, have been to do with this topic, and which is drones.
Yeah.
Very fascinating piece of technology and carried a lot of promise when it started slowly getting sort of unveiled to general public. But I have when I was doing my research, I have like lots of questions about this because I don't fully understand it yet.
Yeah.
The industry, where we are at, where we'll be going, where how did we reach it, etc., etc. But before we go into all those aspects, I want to start with a funny question, so to speak. When drones became all the rage, they became really popular in popular culture, in social media, etc. There was this meme that started doing the rounds, a meme or what you want to call it, of people posting whatever and saying that remember those days when parents used to question their gamer teenage kids कि ये सब करके क्या कर लोगे? How will gaming help you in the rest of your life? Is it gonna be
Yeah.
have anything to do with your career, etc.? And this is the answer: drone operator, because all you're doing is sitting over there operating some joystick and using flying something
Game pads,
like the
yeah.
game pads and flying something thousands of kilometers away. So I wanted to ask you, a modern day drone operator in whatever Air Force, whether it's the US Air Force, Indian Air Force, or whatever arm, you also have drones in the military and the Navy. Is it just like that? Or do you also can you also compare it to that scene from Casino Royale when James Bond, played by Daniel Craig, meets the new quartermaster Q, as he's called, and Q says that I can do a lot of damage sitting in my pajamas using just a laptop, and then James Bond asks, then why do you need me? So Q responds saying, sometimes we need to pull a trigger, and James Bond replies saying, or not pull one, for that you need me.
Yeah.
Or is it something like that you still need the pilots? I know it's a very overarching question, but first let's tackle that for a
Yeah,
bit.
so look, first of all, the even the word drones is slightly problematic because it denotes anything that is an unmanned aircraft, right? From your piddly little quadcopter drones, which you can buy from Amazon or Khan Market for like 3,000 rupees, and fly around in your colony without a care in the world, all the way up to predator type drones, and predator type drones are like as large as aircraft. Obviously they're not the same thing, so to call both those things drones is a little ridiculous, but we journalists are guilty of that, and I can tell you in defense journalism especially, anything that flies without a pilot is called a drone. So first of all, I'd like to clarify very plainly that these are highly complicated systems. There is no similarity whatsoever between a small little, recreational quadcopter drone and something like a Predator, apart from the fact that they're remote controlled. And even there, sometimes that remote control is a little complicated because many of these drones are pre-programmable for autonomous flight, right? So that's one thing. You mentioned game pads and joysticks and things. You'd be surprised, Dave, that many control stations for even the most advanced drones actually have off-the-shelf commercial input equipment like PlayStation joysticks.
Wow,
You remember seeing it during that tragic incident last year with that submersible that went down to the Titanic.
Yes.
The control was an Xbox joystick, and many people are wondering, "Oh my God, how horrible is this?" But that's actually really, really common. Instead of reinventing an input device, simply buy something that's proven and effective and tested off the shelf commercially. And a PlayStation joystick, you'd be surprised, is extremely common in drone input devices and control systems, including, I dare say, some of the most advanced drones in the world. So that's one thing. Point number two is that we live in an age where drones are literally everywhere. in all manner of speaking. Drones are used for all kinds of photography. They're used in political rallies. They're used extensively in journalism. I have to say that India today, in India at least, we pioneered the use of drones in camera work. We did that during the 2014 campaign, I remember. So those are drones, right? Those are drones. But the kind of drones that I think we're going to be focusing on today are ironically not even drones. They're actually called either UAVs or UAS. UAS is the more accepted abbreviation for such equipment. It basically stands for unmanned air systems, and that is a much more accurate description of what these are, because these are systems. They're not just flying machines that are remote controlled. These are highly sophisticated systems. They're highly programmable. They are capable of incredibly long distance and long endurance flight. Like you just said, you're taking the example of the Iranian general Soleimani. They're capable of attack. They're capable of dropping bombs and missiles. So these are in every way not just the future. They're very much here. The great thing about and I'm going to use the word drone because we use it generically, and it's easier to say than unmanned air systems. So, but when I say drones, I'm going to be talking about the military type drones. These are basically just aircraft with intelligent brains, non-human brains, where somewhere in that control loop, a human can plug himself or herself in as a controller. But let me tell you that the kind of drone technology that's coming into play right now, these are drones that are highly intelligent. They've got artificial intelligence algorithms that gives them a sense of where they need to fly and survey.
Wow, okay.
We've got drones that are coming into India that are now capable of 36 hours of non-stop flight, which basically means that the operator can program a flight path, go to sleep, and come back the next day, and it'll still be circling over the Indian Ocean somewhere, and harvesting huge amounts of map data. So that it may sound futuristic, but that is already there now. And it may sound weird, but the advanced drone era actually started a good 20 years ago, when Predator drones actually came into play and started firing missiles in Afghanistan. So a whole generation has passed in the world, under the age of drones. So the next step in drone warfare is going to be even more interesting.
Right. Then explain me something. Why is it that when I was doing my research, I still don't find, like you say, that drones are almost everywhere. Drones are very much the reality. The revolution started 20 years ago, etc.
Yeah.
But I still sort of see them to be invisible when it comes to the popular culture, when it comes to, mainstream defense writing. I know defense journalists love to talk about drones. In season 1, we had Abhishek on the show. He used to love talking about drones. I've heard several Air Force chiefs talk about drones. But when I was doing my research, I just found that there's not a lot of information easily available about just the breakup of what kinds of drones are there, who has what. And even if you talk about popular culture in terms of films and cinema, I was a bit surprised when I try to think of a science fiction movie that depicted drones before their times. You've had them show some of the weirdest, some of the most futuristic equipment, but somehow this one thing was never predicted, so to speak, by all these science fiction movies. Can you get me a sense of why that's that? Because I just could not wrap my head around that.
So actually, the Star Wars films have had systems that are analogous to drones for a very long time. Basically, aircraft, X-wings without pilots. Those are basically unmanned, drones. So I wouldn't agree that nobody actually thought of them. They were envisaged, but I'm guessing that what you're saying is right insofar as that nobody ever thought of them as a separate kind of warfare, instrument. So that is definitely true. As far as who has what. That has changed now. Now there is a great deal of curiosity, like yours and mine, about who owns what kind of drones. All countries worth their salt, including India, are involved in developing their own drones, and we'll come to how India is actually very late on that bus in just a moment.
As always.
But as all in a very, it's very sad because it's a very critical area where India shouldn't have missed the bus, but we did, unfortunately, and now we're trying to run to catch up. But I think, like I said, since for the last 2 decades or so, military planners, aerospace engineers, national security specialists they don't need any more convincing that drones are no longer a luxury item in any war. They're absolutely indispensable. And when I say indispensable, I mean that good luck fighting a war if you don't have some kind of drone support somewhere. Now let's just quickly break down what drones are used for, in a typical military operation. And we've got live examples right in front of us. We've got Ukraine, we've got Israel, we've got Armenia versus Azerbaijan. Yes. We've got the tension between China and Taiwan as well. So let's look at that. The overwhelming duties taken on by drones at all levels of military battle, whether it is at the soldier level or whether it is at the battlefield level, is surveillance. It is basically surveillance. Surveillance, reconnaissance, intelligence gathering, mapping, keeping an eye. That's the reason why drones are called eyes in the sky, right? Eye in the sky. It's basically, it gives you a kind of game-changing, view of the battlefield or the place where you're fighting. Or at the infantry level, if you've got a small little drone, which our guys also have now, which you launch to give you a quick video snippet of what's happening on the other side of the hill, that gives you usable real-time intelligence about what that threat is. Are you going to go over that hill and run into an enemy, or is it going to be safe for you? So reconnaissance, intelligence, surveillance is the main overwhelming 99.9999% of all drone operations in the military sphere are about intelligence gathering, surveillance, operations and reconnaissance, just to give you a fix, a visual fix on what there are. There are of course many sophisticated drones that are capable of giving you synthetic aperture radar pictures and stuff, but that's beyond the scope of this discussion. Let's just keep it as visual intelligence of your area of battle. There are of course drones that are capable of maritime surveillance, long, very, very long missions over ocean to keep a tab on, ships and suspicious movements at sea. That kind of thing can also happen. The very, very tiny, minuscule percentage of drone operations in military warfare, which you actually saw quite frequently in the Ukraine-Russia war, is attack drones. Now, even under attack drones, Dev, there are two kinds. There's one thing called a suicide drone or a kamikaze drone, which is basically a small little aircraft which you can control remotely. Fly it to your target and then smash it into that target. So it's basically like a loitering little aircraft which contains a warhead in it. So it's called a suicide drone because the entire drone smashes into its target in order to try and destroy it. The other is called a hunter-killer drone, which is what the Predator family of drones is basically. Now, the Predator is a drone which is basically like a large aircraft. Now, in pictures, people like to imagine the Predator as this small little thing.
It does look small, actually.
It looks compact. It's a big aircraft. It's a big aircraft-sized machine, right? If you look it up on Google, look at pictures of Predators at their bases, and you can see their controllers and maintenance engineers standing next to them. You get a sense of how big they really are. They're huge machines, okay? And those are hunter-killer or unmanned combat aerial vehicles because they don't crash into the target. They drop bombs or fire missiles into the target. So they're basically like strike aircraft without a pilot. So those are the two kinds of things that are used in offensive operations where drones are concerned. The future of drone operations in the military sphere, Dev, will be of two kinds. There's something called swarm drones,
yes,
where many different drones can come together with a similar kind of objective, sharing information in a kind of neural network of drones, which is very, very exciting for military planners because it allows them to use many low-cost drones to affect something much larger. The second is something called unmanned teaming. Unmanned teaming is an even more interesting, that's something that excites me even more. And this actually, came up in a movie called Stealth. I don't know if you've seen it. It was a movie that was widely panned because the acting was so bad. But it happens to be one of my favorite films because it's like one of those so bad it's good films that was made in the United States. Absolutely fabulous because it was a movie about an unmanned aircraft that kind of turns rogue against its makers, like a Frankenstein drone, right? But in that, the beautiful part about that is it kind of foresaw a technology that has become very real now, and it's called unmanned teaming, which is that if I'm flying a fighter aircraft, I can launch a drone either from the ground or from my aircraft, which is like an advanced drone that may even look like my fighter. So I'm flying a fighter as a human, and there's a drone flying alongside me, and I am not only controlling that fighter, but I'm getting that drone to also do some side missions for me. If I see a threat a few kilometers aage, I can get the drone, instead of risking me and my aircraft, I'll get the drone to go and check it out to see whether they have actually, anything credible in terms of surface-to-air missiles or radar cover, whatever it is. So get that drone to do some of the more dangerous sort of dirty work, use that to fine tune my targeting and my operation. So it's absolutely amazing, and you can program that drone to do something on its own. Say, give me a 6 kilometer radius protection. Anything you see moving in 6 kilometer radius using your radar, alert me. So you can get it to do that, because you don't have as a human you can't do it, but as a machine it has the ability to look 360 degrees all the time. So these are fabulous capabilities that drones are going to have in the future. They're kind of scary, people who buy into the whole Skynet and Terminator kind of psychology, and if you're like me, you think the world is definitely heading in that direction, that technology is going to turn on us at some point of time. These are kind of troubling things with ethical concerns also. But I can tell you that millions and billions of dollars are being spent into making unmanned air systems more intelligent, more capable, longer endurance, more lethal, more evasive, more stealthy, more invisible to radar. So that's the way it's headed.
Yeah. Before, lovely insight, and, thanks for letting us know that you are the believer of, AI is going to take over the world, Skynet is going to go live and then broke. I am not, to be frank. But I think we can do a separate episode on that sometime else. Shiv, before we come to where we're at in terms of what does India have, and like you said, we'll obviously talk about the delay in India hopping on the bandwagon of developing and making its own drones, etc., systems, etc. This is a quick segue to the counterparts in the Navy and on the land. So obviously, land drones don't really go together if you think of drones as only UAVs. But like Shiv mentioned, if we think of drones as sort of automated sort of equipment that can be operated by a soldier or an officer at a base or somewhere far away, what's the picture like in the ocean? There, I know we definitely have a lot of unmanned underwater vehicles. There are several submarines, like the one Titan that you described. The propulsion is done from someplace else. Similarly, I think on the land we have some at least equipment used by bomb disposal squads, where they send sort of a robot to check on an object instead of sending a human being to see if it's kind of okay for a human being to then approach and finally verify what's going on. Similarly, I think there was, if I'm not wrong, some sort of similar robotic thing for an infantry division to send into a house to see what's there, and then relay that information back, and then these guys go in. Similarly, I think some of the dog squads were some sort of automated systems to relay again pictures and images back to the base again to help decision making. Can you give us a picture of what's the situation like?
See, drones specifically denotes air systems. So we can't use the word drones for land and undersea equipment. But you're absolutely right that the funda is basically the same. It's a remote controlled or autonomous piece of equipment that that does its job as it's told. Now, it's a very interesting question because it's also extremely crucial. The mini unmanned submarines that are used for surveillance and detecting mines and basically harbor reconnaissance, etc. Those are called autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs. Now, India does have these. India builds them in the private sector as well as the DRDO makes them themselves. In fact, just a couple of years ago, they began induction into the Indian Navy, and the Indian Navy needs hundreds of these because we've got such a vast coastline. If you're able to have a kind of a network of autonomous underwater vehicles that are just constantly on surveillance duty along our coastline, in our harbors and our ports, it takes the pressure off manned surveillance by the Coast Guard and others to a large extent. So those things are happening. Much more needs to be done. In terms of the Indian Navy has been in the market for unmanned boats as well. Israel is one of the pioneers in the manufacture and development of these mini unmanned boats. They look very much like fast patrol craft that are used by the Coast Guard for interception and stuff, interceptor motor boats, but they're completely unmanned and they'll have a machine gun on them. So these can be controlled from a mothership, like a mothership which is like a warship, like a Coast Guard ship or a naval ship. They can deploy these unmanned boats to go. They'll have GoPro cameras on them. They've got a machine gun on them with an auto targeter, all the equipment, and there'll be a guy sitting on a warship with a console, with the camera feed, with the remote control, probably a PlayStation gamepad as well, and actually doing that work. So these kinds of things can become very useful if you're approaching a suspicious ship. If there's a piracy incident and you don't want to risk and we've seen the Indian Navy conducting manned operations on pirate vessels a lot in the last few days. But these unmanned ships, unmanned boats are something that Israel had developed in a large part because they saw that threat coming in from the sea, the possibility of seaborne terror, attacks and stuff, and that's why they developed those. On land, you're absolutely right. Whether it is bomb disposal, whether it is reconnaissance inside a built-up area to make sure that there are no terrorists inside. The DRDO has, unlike many of its other laboratories, has a very successful robotics laboratory that has built these modular robots. There's one called the Daksh, which is a bomb disposal robot. There's another infantry robot, which is actually armed with machine guns and a rocket launcher. Those are already in service. Happy to tell you that there's something called a stair climbing robot. They specifically created this thing called a stair climbing robot, which is capable of navigating steep stairs, and it's also got cameras and stuff. And this was particularly because there was a high degree of casualties of soldiers when they were conducting house searches in parts of Kashmir. So that's why they had told the DRDO, we need a robot that can climb stairs, because the robots we have right now, we can send them into a house, but they can't go upstairs. And going upstairs is where the greatest vulnerability lies, because you're going up and the person standing at the top has all the advantage. They see you coming up and they kill you. So like an untold number of casualties used to happen in the army and the CRPF, etc., during house searches, because the terrorists would be hiding on the top floor of a house that they'd taken over in some village. So those robots have already come online. Apart from them, unmanned mini tanks. There's one called the Muntra, which the DRDO has developed, which is basically a remote controlled infantry vehicle, a very small infantry vehicle, which could be used in a kind of nuclear biological scenario if there is a meltdown or or germ warfare or biological warfare. These are remote controlled, vehicles, armored vehicles that can go into the battlefield, rescue people, or conduct any kind of surveillance. So the possibilities of remote control equipment are endless, but the complexity is in the actual systems, Dave. Because one might think that building a drone, how complicated can it actually be? It's a simple piece of equipment. If you can build a fighter aircraft, you can most certainly build a drone. But the whole challenge is there is no human in that loop. In the active loop, there is no human. The human is sitting far away, controlling the drone. There are systems on board drones which need to be perfected. The satellite link. Remember that these are not line of sight systems. If you had a system that was line of sight, which means that from where I'm sitting, I can see the drone and therefore control it by a ray of light using my controller. Most drones are not line of sight. They're going to be traveling tens of hundreds of, possibly thousands of kilometers away from where you're controlling them, which means your satellite link, your communication linkages and devices need to be absolutely perfect, because you need to control that damn thing in real time. There can't be a huge delay in what you're doing. Secondly, if you want your drones to be autonomous, how much autonomy are you going to give your drones? Are you going to give your drones the ability to detect and strike? That has never happened so far. Autonomy for strike has never been provided to drones. There's always human override. A person launching a missile is never a drone. It's always a human, right? But going into the future, like for example, right now, the Indian Navy has 2 leased MQ-9 Sea Guardian drones, which have been leased from the United States, which operate out of a airbase called Arakonam, which is on the coast of Tamil Nadu. Now these are predator type drones that are capable of 24 to 48 hours flight, non-stop flight over ocean. These can be programmed, and I've seen those control stations. I've seen those algorithms. They can be programmed to with such precision, Dev. They can you can say I can send one of those drones out and say, I want you to go and fly around the Andaman Islands for the next 15 hours, and I only want you to send me a notification if you see anything suspicious a minimum of 6 kilometers off the coast of the islands, and whatever you spot needs to be at least 10 meters long. So by giving that stipulation, it won't bother about fishing boats and stuff. But anything bigger than that, it'll alert me saying, okay, here's this,
really
here's
cool.
it. And that's what those cameras are programmable for. You can literally tell it. So if you see anything white, let me know. If you see anything that's that you can feed in pictures of certain ships saying, head out here. Here's a reference image of what I'm looking for. Let me know if you see anything like this. So you know there's a suspicious Chinese vessel somewhere, and you've got this grainy Google image of it. Feed that picture into the data set. Tell the drone, okay, take off please, and report back to me if you see anything like this in this designated zone that I'm asking you to fly in. And it will do that. And there are algorithms and there are software updates that are coming where drones are capable of doing that. And that basically means you're adding more and more layers of decision making to drones. You're giving them you're giving them mission objectives, and these things will become more and more and more and more narrow. The reliance on drones for sort of effect based operations, as it's called, will become overwhelming in future wars, because it's just going to be impossible to risk human life anymore. In a small conflict, forget about in Ukraine and versus Russia, you saw the use of a lot of kamikaze drones, the suicide drones that I was talking about. Huge numbers, hundreds were used to destroy tanks and stuff like that. Even in a tiny little conflict like the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict, you saw drones being used to devastating effect. The Azerbaijan army was using targeted kamikaze drones to destroy Armenian radar trucks and sensor trucks and things like that. So imagine the huge game changing effect that a tiny little drone can have. Imagine having like this huge multi-million-dollar surface to air missile system deployed somewhere in Pakistani Punjab. Okay, they've got this massive. They've spent millions of dollars acquiring this Chinese state-of-the-art, air defense system, and they're like bragging about it on social media and everywhere else, saying that now you guys can't touch us, and you guys can't do shit, and it's now with our airspace is impregnable, blah blah blah. Now all India would need to do, and of course I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm just saying that millions of dollars worth of equipment, a $25,000 drone, kamikaze drone, like the Harop, which we have in operation here in India, which we bought from Israel, with the right amount of intelligence, with the right amount of coordinates and data and targeting information, a $25,000 drone can go and destroy millions of dollars worth of sensor equipment and completely switch off an air defense shield that a country may claim to have. I'm just saying India and Pakistan because it's emotive and we love Pakistan so much. But I'm just saying that the reason why the drones become these massive game changers is because they are inherently cheap. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about the suicide drones, which actually do the dirty work of attacking and destroying equipment. They are cheap to operate. They are cheap to develop. They're cheap to maintain. They're cheap to store. They are small. You cannot detect them using satellites. They can be fired from a truck. They can be fired from a field. They can be fired from a house terrace. They can be fired and operated from literally anywhere. And that's why it's become such a huge menace also, these suicide drones. So drone warfare is here to stay. It's going to become much more precise. I see more, I see more intelligence being given to drones to take their own decisions. But I'm one of those people who who always believes in, you know, erring on the side of caution as far as technology is concerned, because these are machines that are being bestowed with life and death powers, and going forward, the appetite for human loss will come down. The appetite for human loss is something that governments will find hard to sell to their people and to their domestic audiences. After Operation Enduring Freedom, the post 9/11 phase, after COVID and all these things, and these wars especially, governments, I believe, will find it very difficult to justify sending people into war in the future.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why all these machines that you've just mentioned, Dev, will come into play.
Fascinating. I think just fascinating and just very cool look into the kind of equipment that already exists. Not forget the futuristic part that Shiv is talking about. So yeah, let's move our focus a bit back to the air and to the current status of what we have. A lot of it that's in operation Israel has given us, not given us, sorry, we bought from Israel.
Actually, all of it.
All of it, yeah. Apart, unless you want to count the deal for the most advanced version of the Predator that's, I think, under negotiation or still in progress, जो भी है, अब तक हुआ नहीं है, but more or less it mostly should happen if nothing goes wrong.
Correct.
But I was also looking at what we are doing internally, and I have a long list, by the way. A lot of it being done by the DRDO in partnership with several private companies. Long list, but all under development. So there are multiple strands over here, which I'd like to tell us more about. One is, like you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, why did it take us so long to start looking at building our own drone systems? Second, I have gotten the sense that the private sector is hugely involved in drone manufacturing, unlike, let's say, the other equipment that we operate, whether it's fighter jets, missiles, etc. And not just the private sector, a lot of young startups, small companies you've not even heard of. The list I have, for example, that the DRDO has partnered with, I don't even know those companies. Some Bangalore-based, some Mumbai-based, some Ahmedabad-based. In fact, if you remember, last year there was, during the Republic Day before this, there was a nice, a very lovely drone show, swarm drone display. Beautiful to watch. This was, I think, the beating retreat ceremony a few days after the Republic Day. Very beautiful images, and that was by a young startup from, I think, if I'm not wrong, Bengaluru. So these two strands. One, what took us so long? And second, how is it, and is it a good thing that you have all these young startups all over the place, coming in this industry?
So I'll start with the bad news first, because I like to get that out of the way, and the truth needs to be told. We've missed the bus several times on as far as drone technology is concerned. The reasons for it, I can wager it, because I was not a journalist then, but from what my understanding of it is, Dev, that India simply did not recognize, and when I say India, I mean the system, I mean the Ministry of Defense, I mean the Air Force, I mean the military at large, didn't recognize the importance of drone warfare. It was viewed as possibly a luxury item, something you can do without if push comes to shove. But it totally missed the simple fact that once drones came into play in military operations, they overnight changed the game. And once they changed the game, the developments of drones, their advancements, and their sort of pervasive nature in warfare was so rapid that it was like a blaze, and by which time India had kind of missed that bus. Now, we're talking about a post-Kargil kind of era, because post-Kargil is when India kind of woke up from a semi-slumber as far as military equipment was concerned, and decided it needed to do all these things. It needed to restructure, it needed to do self-reliance, the Kargil Review Committee. And it's almost like before the Kargil war, we had no idea what was going on, and post-Kargil, finally we woke up and decided, okay, we've not been doing these things. Now, drones became a kind of reality in the early 2000s, which is why the Indian government, in order to not miss the bus, they suddenly realized we've not been developing anything by ourselves. We don't even know, we don't even have drone tech. India had just started flight testing the Tejas, manned fighter aircraft. So drones were a far cry from anything that was in the on the drawing board for our scientists. So, and not their fault. This is like I said, no individual is to blame. This was like a system failure for not recognizing the importance that drones were going to embrace in just a matter of a few years. They were going to be the dominant technology. India always does what the only thing it can do in such a situation, which is to buy from abroad. And at that point of time, thankfully, Israel had been a very good friend of India through the Kargil war. Israel had provided us with precision weapons that were used in the Tiger Hill bombings, etc. And so that relationship between India and Israel on the military front was extremely strong, and that's why India was able to quickly procure some drones from Israel. These were pretty rudimentary drones. They were the Heron and the Searcher Mark II drones. Still very much in operation, by the way. All these years later, they're still being operated. Very trusty, good workhorse drones, but fairly basic. Parallel to this, India decided, yes, we need a drone program of our own, so let's start developing our own drones. So they had one drone program, the initial drone program called the Nishant. Now, the Nishant was a drone very much like the Searcher. Small, not very big, not very capable, but a kind of easy drone to operate. The problem with the Nishant drone was that it was a rail-launched drone. So you needed a rail launcher for it instead of a runway like the other drones. And therefore, it had a very short stint in the army. The army just kind of, despite some advantages it may have had, which is to be launched and recovered from wherever it is, the army said, this is not what we want. We want a takeoff and landing type drone system. So the Nishant was shelved. Then the DRDO began, the Air Force, Navy and the Army basically came together and told the DRDO, look, we want, if you're going to be developing a drone, let's aim for the moon. Develop something big and capable for us that's capable of, 24 hours of non-stop flight, long distance surveillance, long endurance, medium altitude, high altitude flight, that we can do instead of these, piddly little drones that you want to make for us. So they started developing something called the Tapas. It was called the Rustam initially, named after a famous scientist in the DRDO, but they renamed it Tapas for whatever reason. The Tapas development went on for many years. Some of them crashed during development, but it seemed to be a very promising platform. It was a pretty basic twin-engined unmanned aircraft capable of long distance flight, etc. But for some reason, and this was just recently, just a couple of months ago, in a move that kind of surprised me but also didn't surprise me, the Indian military said, we don't want it.
Okay.
We don't want this drone because and the inside story of that is that the DRDO apparently rejected or ignored many design changes, weight-related issue concerns, and other concerns that the military had been constantly inputting on the program right through its development phase. To cut a long story short, the Tapas is now no longer a mission mode program. A mission mode program means something that's being developed in a timely manner with a stated objective and mission, right? So the military has shut its doors on the Tapas. So crores of rupees down the drain in terms of nothing is a waste in military development in my view, but insofar as something that should have been delivered by now, that money is evaporated. So the Tapas program story is over, at least for now, though my sources tell me it's still being developed using internal money of the DRDO, and hopefully they'll meet those criteria a little later on. Now things switch to something called the Archer. There's an Archer drone which the Indian labs are now developing, which is a kind of it looks very much like the Heron. So now there's a kind of debate going on online, especially about, we've come this far just to copy the Heron. We should have done this in the first place because it was a tried and tested design, etc., etc. There's one section that claims this has nothing to do with the Heron. It's a completely indigenous Indian design, made in India, blah, blah, blah. But there are those who say, come on, man, just look at these two things together. They look exactly alike. It's the same kind of aerodynamics, etc., etc. And if you use your common sense, it does look like the Heron. So it's quite likely that it's at least inspired by that. But that's a low-risk option. At least you're going with a design that is already tried and tested. So now the military is kind of depending on this thing called the Archer NG, new generation, which is a drone that will come online. But we still don't have any strike drones. We don't have any offensive drones. Now, that is where the US deal comes into play. So, 31 Sea Guardian and Sky Guardian drones, which are basically highly advanced, souped up versions of the Predator, capable of maritime surveillance, capable of carrying missiles and weapons. Whenever that happens, that will happen. We'll have to see when that happens. But very interestingly, something that happened just a few days ago again is that the Adani Group has just handed over the first of 4 Hermes 900 long distance surveillance drones to the Indian Navy. There's going to be 2 for the Navy and 2 for the Army. These are once again, ironically, Israeli drones assembled by the Adani Group in Telangana. So these are going to be called Made in India drones, but these are not Indian drones by any stretch. The tech, the materials, it's all from Israel, and they're going to be handed over. And up to 100 more of these drones could also potentially be ordered. Right now, perhaps it's a little politically sensitive to order 100 drones from the Adani Group. Yeah. So maybe this small little limited order is just to test the waters, etc. Election year, blah, blah, blah. So those drones are also coming online. But then again, those are not Indian drones. They're only assembled in India. I'm not belittling that. Even assembly means hundreds of jobs, but it's not an Indian drone. So look at it. So look at the drone fleet overview, Dev. This is what it looks like. It looks like this. You've got an old fleet of Heron and Searcher Mark II drones. You've got 2 leased MQ-9 Sea Guardian drones that are operated by the Navy that will go back once the new ones start arriving. You've got the Hermes 900 Israeli drones that are joining up now. You've got the MQ-9, 31 of which will come from the United States. So you have a 100% imported, non-Indian drone fleet at the advanced level. Okay, at the advanced level, all your drones are basically of a foreign make until the Archer that I was just speaking about, when that is ready, when it gets manufactured. But until then, we're completely dependent on imported drones, which is a sad thing. And if you look at our neighborhood, Iran has its own drones, Turkey has its own drones, Pakistan claims to have its own drones, though they're all Chinese. China has built a vast fleet of drones of their own. Some of them are very credible, including drones that are capable of firing weapons. I saw some of those at the Paris Air Show, and they're very impressive machines. We can talk till the cows come home about the quality of Chinese equipment, and that is a real argument to make. But the fact is, they've made equipment that they're able to export to other countries, which India has not, as far as drones is concerned. Now, you mentioned something very, very important, and I want to touch upon that, Dev. You talked about how there was that spectacular swarm drone show at a beating retreat ceremony. Now, the private sector startups and companies that are making these small tactical drones that are for very, very, very targeted, specific missions, there are plenty of those. That startup ecosystem is actually flourishing right now. It's blossomed and it's flourishing right now. They are not only doing great work, they are being given contracts by the army. The reason also is because it's easier to buy small tactical drones because the value of those deals is small. The financial powers that the army has, especially in light of the military standoff with China, to make quick emergency orders of small value deals of equipment are easy to do. That's why between 2020 and now, a whole plethora of deals have been signed by the Army and Air Force with these startup companies to provide them with a few crores worth of these drones. So whether it is hand-launched drones, like the Swift that are used in Ladakh, they literally just hand-launched drones, for surveillance. To these heavy-duty quadcopter drones, which are capable of carrying 50 kilograms of cargo, for high-altitude areas. They're actually being used to carry hot meals to soldiers in high altitudes. So no more risky helicopter flights to ferry equipment, medicines, food. They're using these drones as the workhorse. It's happening in a brilliant way already in Ladakh. You've got drones that are conducting surveillance from ships. The Navy's bought these, and these are all private sector manufactured and developed drones made in India. Equipment completely made over here. Now, when it comes to swarm drones, the game changes a little bit. There's a company called New Space, which is run by a former Air Force officer. I think that's the company you were talking about from Bengaluru. Their tech, Dave, is not just the drones, it's the technology and the software that goes into the drones. Because building an actual drone is very, very rudimentary technology. That's the reason why you can pick up a drone for 3,000 rupees in Khan market, because the tech itself, any kid in college or an IIT can build a drone. It's no big deal. But it's what you put into the drone's brain that matters. It's the software, it's the sensors, it's the communication links, it's the algorithms that you're putting into the drones that allows them to speak to each other, become part of a drone neural network, take joint decisions, conduct coordinated operations, be able to distribute objectives between like 15 drones that you send out for one objective. Maybe some drones will fall back, letting the other drones go ahead. That's what swarm operations is. A swarm operations is basically saying, look, I don't have one big advanced drone to do this, but if I have 15 to 16 smaller drones that are going to pool their resources, pool their computing power, pool the strength of their cameras and their visual equipment and sensors, then it actually becomes one big kind of moving machine. And I'm repeating the word neural network because that's exactly what this is. That's what scientists are trying to do, to give militaries the flexibility to have this kind of low-cost swarm warfare where they can send out 15 drones, hunt for, very simplistic example, send out 15 drones, talking to each other, sharing information, and adjusting their flight paths according to the information that they have based on their objective, and then figuring out which one of them is going to go and actually conduct the attack. Maybe not all 15 will go. Maybe 2 or 3, and that will be a joint decision by all the drones together. That's what swarm warfare is. That's like one of thousands of possible examples. It could be a rescue mission. It could be humanitarian relief. It could be sending a swarm of drones out to search for lost people at sea. It could be anything, but it's just one way of using intelligent smaller machines, for a much larger effect. So all of this is going to happen. So the bad news front for India is on the advanced drone level. On the advanced drone level, I feel like crying. There's a lot to cry about because having missed that bus, the constant effort to catch up is a road filled with bad news because this technology is moving so fast. This bus is not stopping for you, right? And you're spending money developing something, but then it's already obsolete. Yeah. But these amazing startups in Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Delhi, elsewhere, that stuff they're doing, that is the cutting edge. Yeah. That is where it's at. That is at a level that countries around the world are conducting research in. And that's the reason why companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin have huge R&D centers here, because they want to plug into that that startup ecosystem, because they realize, hey, Indian guys, software, this can't go wrong. They 100% will do something that either we can't do or will do it at like 100th the cost without sinking millions of dollars into R&D, and they'll know how to execute it, without too much of a fuss. So everyone wants a piece of India's, drone startup ecosystem, the functional drones, the swarm drones, the effect-based operations, drone architecture. All of that is going to be a very, very big thing going forward.
Yeah. Once again, fascinated with your answer and what you described. And that, the last part that you said also kind of takes me back to our previous episode of Make in India. And this got me thinking that if perhaps the system and the military had empowered startups or private companies back then in the 60s with the advanced weaponry that we spoke about in the previous episode, perhaps that thing would have been a different picture, because I'm pretty sure this startup ecosystem that we're kind of empowering. By the way, the Indian Air Force, I think, has been holding a drone competition for these guys,
every year.
To identify the best talent. So if stuff like that was happening back then, perhaps the picture with our legacy systems would perhaps not have been what it was. We'll move a bit to now the challenges posed by drones and drone warfare, but after a quick break.
Hi guys, this is Neeja Dutt. I just recorded my episode with the Fashion Scoop. This will be on the India Today podcast, which launches this week. You can listen to us whenever. I spoke to Priyanka about watches. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Welcome back. Our producer Anna just told us, Shiv, that we spoke too long in the first half. Perhaps it's a testament to
Droning on and on.
yeah, droning on. Nice, but perhaps it's because the topic itself is so fascinating, at least for me, and I'm really hoping it will also be for our viewers and listeners. We've spoken for I think about 45 minutes now. Usually we take a break around 30 minutes. Anyway, so I think we've more or less like Shiv has given us a very nice and vivid description of what drones are currently able to do and what he foresees they will be able to do in the near future. Uh, and also a picture of where India's drone abilities lie, and the severe lack of the advanced combat drone. We have a lot of young, promising startups giving us all sorts of drones for this other task, whether it's surveillance, like you said, transporting goods and stuff like that. But the combat drone, like the Predator, which can travel
Yeah.
and shoot missiles and take down targets, that is missing, and we are still banking on the US to give us one. I want to focus a bit on the challenges being posed by this new age of drones. And there are two threads over here. One is the training challenges, because the way I see it, you've always had your equipment being upgraded in incremental amounts, right? You have one missile, your next missile is an advanced version of just the missile. The basic technology remains the same. Same with guns, same with aircraft, same with ships, etc. You can get more advanced, but the basic concept of flying remains the same. The basic concept of just like traveling and attacking somebody with a gun remains the same. Similarly, the basic concept of going into the sea, whether under or over, remains the same. This is entirely new tech. Like we spoke at the beginning of this episode, this is tech, when it comes to drones at least, operated by a gamepad, like an Xbox controller. This is tech that is operated, thousands of kilometers away from a bunker, so to speak, by one guy who's operating a joystick when it comes to unarmed aerial vehicles. What are the training challenges like for the militaries? Are there already courses in, let's say, the NDA or the IMA or the Air Force Academy for stuff like this, or is it something that is done much later?
So drones are, unmanned aerial vehicle operations is already a separate cadre in the Air Force and the military at large. There's no question that, once India realized that it had kind of missed the bus in terms of recognizing the importance of drone warfare, at least structurally, in terms of technology, it's still running to catch up. But in terms of creating those structures to create a cadre of drone operators and drone specialists, that already exists. We've got dedicated drone training infrastructure. We've got drone squadrons, drone flights, etc. That is not a worry. The training infrastructure is very much there. Like with training for any kind of equipment, there is a stipulated regimen, there is a stipulated curriculum that needs to be gone through. Obviously, a lot of technical stuff, but also simulation training, all of that. The whole works that you can are already thinking about in your mind. All of that is there. There's a great deal of simulation, computer-based training on drones, obviously, until they actually get to go out and fly actual drones. That's not going to be really a problem. The challenge for India actually is going to be in the technology itself. I don't foresee training being a problem. I foresee technology being not a problem but a challenge. It's going to be, how do we milk that technology for India's very unique needs? And let's face it, India has the kind of challenges that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, right? We've got adversaries on two fronts in the north. We've got an Indian Ocean that's hotting up quite a bit because of China. We've just seen what's happening in the Persian Gulf. We've seen so much piracy. We've seen how the pressure on India to keep those sea lanes of trade and communication open increasing. The usage of drones and mind you, the leased American drones that we've had have been doing a stellar job for the Navy, keeping an eye on all these piracy and Houthi attack incidents that have been happening in the Red Sea. They've been doing fabulous work. So the Navy knows for certain that we can't go back to a non-drone era now. There's no going back. These are our eyes now. We have to fight with drones. So so I see technology as a challenge, not so much training, because training repurposing officers and men and women in the military for drone operations. That process started like a good 10-15 years ago. So that momentum has been reached, that critical mass has been reached. There are an entire new generation of youngsters now entering the military, are entering in an age when operating a phone or a joystick or a computer is it's not even second nature, it's first nature, right? It's first nature. They know everything about it. So that layer of challenge is also not there. There's no such thing as is that person tech savvy. Everyone in this generation and the last generation, in fact, our generation was the first sort of tech savvy generation. So you can imagine how tech savvy everyone else is, right? The post internet generation. So there's no problem in terms of training, handling, etc. It's about tactics, how you use the drones, how you extract the best out of them. Are you aware of everything that your drone can do? Are you using it optimally for the operation at hand? Those are the challenges. And so there's nothing robotic about drones. Drones may be robotic, but how human operators use them is where their success actually lies. I missed one point earlier, Dave, about the challenges of drones, and this is that. And it actually, I can align it in this answer to your question, which is that the other big challenge of drone warfare is, let's never forget that if regular militaries can use drones, let's never forget that terrorists and non-state actors will and have been using drones to devastating effect. If you look at Syria, ISIS has been using drones that carry grenades. Hamas used them in Israel during the October 7th attack, where they used drones holding small little rocket-propelled grenades, and they just simply drop them on targets, on tanks. They're doing that now in Gaza also. So from the smallest level drone threat, a $200 drone rigged with a grenade can, the ISIS losing 5 guys is no big deal, but that grenade killing 2 US soldiers is a huge deal, right? So that's what I mean by how these terror groups can use them as game changers. Pakistani terrorists are using drones to transport drugs and guns and stuff into Punjab, which is why you find crashed drones in Punjab all the time. So they're using those drones, and drones can evade radar. They can fly at 10 feet, fly over the border, drop their stuff and go back. And even if it gets shot down, big deal. It's like a $200 drone. Return of investment to ho gaya. So that is a huge challenge for India. That's massive. The sleeper cells of terror groups using drones armed with IEDs in an urban setup can easily escape an intelligence net. How many people will you keep an eye on? So the proliferation of drones, the threat to airports, like we've seen entire airports shutting down because of drones spotted in flight paths and stuff. Those are the challenges as far as India is concerned. As far as everything else, we've got it sorted.
Yeah, it's like you read my mind. My last question on this episode was actually going to be about the security challenges being posed by drones and the ability for them to proliferate. Because not your high-end combat drones, because those obviously will be controlled heavily. You can, I think of them as your nuclear weapons. Those will not make it be so easy for them to go into the black market, the grey market. But the small little loitering drones, the kamikaze drones, I'm pretty sure it already has the... There's
in Syria and Iraq, sorry to interrupt you, but in Syria and Iraq, these grenade-rigged quadcopter drones forced countries like the US and France, into completely retreating and having to restructure how they were going to conduct those operations because they were losing people like flies. And they had to literally go back to their governments and say, we need anti-drone systems that can take these on, because these guys are sending hundreds of such drones into places that we are. We take over a city, they'll send 100 drones, we can't do anything. And they're all rigged with grenades. Cost them nothing. Guys sitting in just 2 kilometers away and operating these drones, and they like massacring us, right? So that's what I mean. It's having a big military type effect can sometimes cost nothing. That's what drones bring to the game.
Right. So, yeah, that's a nice way to, I think, end this episode. One last and very quick thought, a bit of trivia, since you were mentioning the different kinds of drones that you've seen, and one was a sort of, hand-propelled one. I'm pretty sure you've watched the movie Uri,
Yeah.
And in that they depict this, and that's what I want to know from you. Do I know the answer? I think
The
is it
bird,
a
right?
ridiculous idea for a drone to be like that, or is it something in the realm of possibility?
I think it was a little too filmy. Drones. They're not designed to be aesthetic in that sense. Of course, there is an old adage in aviation, which is that if it looks right, it flies right. But I don't think that applies in this case. There was something very fantasy about this
Yeah.
particular, bird type drone. I'm not going to make a sensible comment about a film. It was a film, so there are many things that they must have taken liberties on. But let's make no mistake that drones are very much aviation itself, aeronautical engineering, aviation design takes a great deal of inspiration from flying creatures, whether it is birds, whether it is bats. Lockheed Martin had a drone that was capable of flying, dropping into the water, conducting undersea operations, and then going back up. It was called the cormorant because it was inspired by a bird
wow.
called the cormorant, which flies, dives into the water, fishes, and then flies back out.
Yeah.
So, and they actually engineered its wings to be like the cormorants, which kind of fold inwards, allowing it to become like a torpedo. The connection between the living world and drone world is definitely there. It's always the inspiration.
Yeah, right. So the Uri bird-like drone that managed to fly and perch itself on the window ledge of the terrorist hideout, that probably wasn't reality. But I'm pretty sure drones were up in the air when the
Oh, they
actual
were for
surgical
sure. They
strike
were.
happened,
They were. Yes.
which I think you've also written about in
Yes.
your book. They were there, kind of keeping an eye and making sure what was happening was being relayed back. Thanks, Shiv. A fascinating episode, I think, which is why it's gone on for so long. But I'm pretty sure our viewers and listeners will love it. Which is why we'll also want you to let us know in the comments if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, please leave us a rating on the respective app that you're listening to us on. Thanks as always to our lovely producer Anna Priyadarshini. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries without passport. Bye bye.